Hey everyone, in this video I want to talk about another one of the new features in CSM 10.1 called action blocks. Now a couple weeks ago I did a video on creating one-steps that could share data between them. And I mentioned that this was kind of like a function in programming or a subroutine for those familiar with that concept. And I also mentioned that there was this new feature called action blocks coming out in 10.1 that made this a whole lot easier. So in this video, we're going to explore action blocks, and we're actually going to build the same functionality that I did in that other video. If you haven't seen that video, you don't have to, but if you want to watch it, I'll leave the link down in the description. We're going to use the same one-steps, or the same functionality in a new one-step, and use an action block instead of an outer and inner one-step. So real quick, let me switch over to the Cherwell Rich client. And the first thing you'll notice on the one-step menu when you open it up in 10.1 is that there's this new menu option, one-step action blocks. You can dive in there. It's a manager just like all of the other managers in Cherwell, but it really makes a lot more sense if we get to it from the one-step. So let's dive into a one-step, and then I'll also show what that manager looks like once the one-step's been created. So let me go into the one-step manager, and I actually created a folder. I moved those other one-steps into its own folder to declutter things a little bit. I have demo inner one-step and demo outer one-step. Now in that other video, we ran demo outer one-step, and it populated a stored value, then ran demo inner one-step, which used that stored value and displayed it in a pop-up. We're going to do a very similar thing, but with action blocks. So let's go ahead and create a new one-step. We'll call this demo with action blocks. And the very first thing we're going to do is drag this new run an action block sub-action onto the canvas. I'll leave the name the default. But now I need to choose an action block from this drop-down. If I click the ellipses, it brings up the new action block manager. Like I said, very similar to every other manager in Cherwell. Go ahead and click the add button. Give it a name. We'll call it show pop up, because that's basically what we're going to be doing here. Click OK. And now this should look very familiar to you. It's just the one-step editor. Anything you can do in a one-step, you can do in an action block. You'll notice that all of the actions listed in the one-step editor are also listed here. And in this case, we're going to just show a pop-up. Nothing fancy, just show a pop-up. Now, what do we want to show in this pop-up? In the last video, we showed the value of a stored value, but I mentioned that in action blocks, there was actually a way to explicitly pass parameters around. So let's go over to this head node over here, and you'll notice this new parameters tab. I can click the add button. Let's call this content. We'll make it a data type of text. We'll say it's required, and we'll leave the default value blank. So now that we've created this parameter, we can actually use it in this show a pop-up step. So I'll right click and go down to variables and click content. So these parameters that you create over here, you'll notice it has the icon that is the same as the variable icon. These parameters show up as variables in the one-step. So they're basically like variables that already have a value before the steps in your action block even start to run. So these variables have a value that's provided to them when the action block is called or run. So when we go to our show a pop-up step, we can use that variable here and show it as the contents of the pop-up. Let's give this a caption. I think in the last video I gave a caption of hello. And that's basically it for this action block. We'll hit OK. We'll select it and hit OK to close the manager. It'll show up here. Everything looks good. Now, how do we actually provide a value for that parameter? Well, we can go to this parameters tab down here, and you'll notice that runAnActionBlock.content, content being the name of our parameter, shows up and indicates that it's required. So let's give it a value. In the last video, we gave it a value based on a prompt. So let's do the same thing here. So let's go down to prompts. Let's say new custom prompt. I'm not going to get fancy and rename it. We'll say enter the value for content. Prompt type is text. That looks good. Leave everything else as the defaults and save. And now we're all done. In the last video, we had a total of 3 or 4 actions that went into 2 different one-steps. In this case, we have a single one-step with one sub-action, this run an action block sub-action. And inside that action block, we have a single step. So this makes everything much simpler, and we also don't run into a lot of the gotchas that I mentioned at the end of the other video. The data that goes from this one step into the action block is limited to just that communication. So we don't have to worry about polluting the system with additional stored values or run the risk of other one steps trying to use this value at the same time. When this one step runs, everything is within the context of that one step execution. So let's go ahead and run it, see what it does. Demo with action blocks. Let's click run. We get our prompt. We'll say hi there. Click OK, and we get our pop-up. So just like in the last video, we got the value of the variable from the user in one step, and then displayed it in a different area. So in the last video, it was another one step. In this video, it's an action block. Now, obviously, if you were going to use action blocks, you would probably be doing something a little more complex, maybe talking to an API that has an authentication mechanism that you have to do over and over again. Regardless of how you're actually interacting with the API, you always need to authenticate. That's a good candidate for an action block. Other common workflow steps that might have to happen on every single transition, for instance, writing an audit record or something like that, that might be a good candidate for an action block. Any sort of reusable logic that you don't want to have spread out amongst a lot of different one steps is a good candidate for an action block. So let's finish this one step, and it's all done. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it gave some insight into this new feature that I'm really excited about. I'm going to start using it a lot more for some of the stuff that I've been doing. In the past, I was using the trick I showed in the last video, again, link down below, of sharing data between multiple one steps. But now I can rewrite all of those one steps as a single one step calling a shared action block. So I'm really excited about this feature. Let me know how you plan to use it in the comments below, and if you're as excited about it as I am. Again, if you have any questions about anything like this, or have other features in 10.1 that you want me to make videos about, leave a comment below, shoot me an email. I'd love to make a video about it. Remember to subscribe to the channel, click the bell to be notified when videos like this get released, and have a great week. Thanks for watching.